Alright, this isn't going to be particularly funny. I'm just waking up and want to get this out to you guys as soon as possible, so I'll just be trying to make this as informative as I can, and screw the comedy for now. I'm doing this again unscripted, so I guess fuck it and let's hop into this intro. My Season 2 Week 3 matchup was against Jamie and the LA Lopunnies, and although I feel like I analyzed his threats correctly, he didn't bring half of what I was expecting. So originally I was fearing either a Scarfed Hydreigon or a Sub-Calm Mind Raikou lead, and I also was thinking he'd bring bulky offensive Granbull and some variant of Tangrowth. As you can see from the team preview, Jamie said fuck all that noise and decided to bring his hazard removing flying water kite thing and those two ghosts. I honestly hadn't anticipated him bringing either ghost, which really put a dent in my plans, as I will explain in a second. So let's just hop into this battle real quick. So I decided to lead with my Excelgor, and he chose to lead with his Entei. And as soon as I saw this Entei, hold on, let me explain my set on Excelgor first. So since I thought he was going to bring Scarfed Hydreigon and I was fearing that lead, I actually brought a Scarfed Excelgor, carrying Bug Buzz, U-Turn, Knockoff, and Final Gambit. So when I saw this Entei, I was like, damn, I need to click Final Gambit, but I couldn't because of those two ghosts, and I figured he'd predict that and switch into one of those ghosts. And so obviously I couldn't Final Gambit or else I'd lose my Excelgor for nothing. So I clicked U-Turn to try to get a favorable matchup on his switch, which actually was a misplay on my part, because if he had clicked Extreme Speed, my Bugatti would have been greatly weakened, and his Final Gambit later would have done a lot less damage than it could have done. So that was my first misplay, clicking U-Turn instead of just switching straight out. But anyway, I decided to U-Turn, and he stays in, so I go into my Heatran. So he used his Sacred Fire, which was kind of a read on my play, I guess, because I figured if he did want to stay in, he wouldn't go for the ground move because it was too early to make those kind of predictions, and I figured he'd just want to attack what's in front of him, which would be my bug type Pokemon. So I figured he'd go for that fire type move, which he does. So I soak that shit up with Flash Fire, and he switches out into his Mantine, and I take this time to set up my rocks. So when I saw his Mantine come out, I was like, alright, good. He's not going to want those rocks up, so he's definitely going to defog here. He's not going to go for that Scald. He's not going to go for any sort of attacking move, so it's going to be safe to bring in my Smeargle, and I'll still be able to conserve my Sash. So I switch in the Smeargle on his defog, predicting that correctly, and I take this time to use Dark Void, and thankfully I landed. I'm running Dark Void over Spore because of Tangrowth, which he didn't end up bringing, which pissed me off, but that's okay. So I land this Dark Void, and now I figure it's time to pivot out. I actually brought Parting Shot on my Smeargle, which I thought was a very good way to pivot out against some of his threats that I thought he'd be bringing. So I see that he stays in, and I bring in my Choice Specs Gardevoir, because I know I'd trace his water absorbability, and I figured if he woke up, he'd try to break my Sash with like a Scald or something. So I figured that'd be my best switching. So he stays asleep, thankfully, and I decide that I'm going to go for the Shadow Ball because it hits pretty much a Spec Shadow Ball, hits a half of his team for super effective damage, and the other half for still a decent amount of damage. So he actually ends up switching in his Dusclops, which was amazing because I was kind of worried about this guy right here. I didn't know how I'd deal with it upon seeing it in the team preview, but I do over half, and I get the special defense drop with that hit, which was incredible. So he stays in and goes for that Shadow Sneak, trying to get damage on my Gardevoir as I just go for one more Shadow Ball and finish it off. Now he brings in this Heracross, and immediately I knew that it was Scarfed. Like, there was no doubt in my mind that this thing was Scarfed, and none of my team, I felt, wanted to take a hit from a Scarfed Heracross. So I was looking at my team, I was like, what is my least useful Pokemon in this matchup, and I ended up deciding that I did not need Celebi, so I switch in my defensive Celebi, and it decides to eat up the Shadow Claw, which was incredible. So he's gonna bring his Entei again, and at this point I was like, I'm carrying Psychic, Thunder Wave, Recover, and Shadow Ball, and instead of trying to go for damage or recover, I figured that anything on his team paralyzed, barring that Mantine that's asleep, would be awesome to get that Parahax going. So I took the chance and I risked him switching in the already sleeping Mantine, and I clicked Thunder Wave, and I caught his Entei, which was amazing for me. So I Thunder Wave his Entei, and then I was like, all right, I'm not staying in against this thing. So I switched back out into my Smeargle, thinking that he's not going to click Extreme Speed, and I'll still outspeed him, and if he's banded, I'll still be able to get my webs up at least, because he'll break my Sash, hopefully not get the burn with Sacred Fire. This is risky on my part, and then I'd get the webs up and we'd go from there. But he ends up switching out back into Mantine, so I just decide, fuck it, I'm pivoting back out into my Gardevoir, and this time I'm gonna click Thunderbolt because I just wanted to get rid of this Mantine. So he ends up going for the Toxic, which I'm okay with. Definitely would rather have it on my Gardevoir than anything else. I Thunderbolt as he switches back into Entei, and I do a decent chunk of damage. I'm pretty satisfied with that, but I don't want to stay in because he can still clean up my Gardevoir with an Extreme Speed, and with that toxic damage, it was for sure going to take me out. So I had to switch out. I decided to switch back out into my Heatran, and he gets paralyzed, thankfully, on this turn. And I'm still thinking that he clicked Extreme Speed, but he was actually smart and predicted my switch into Heatran. So I set up my rocks, and he actually goes for that Bulldoze, which does 70% damage and lowers my speed. So with my speed being lowered, I could not click Earth Power, because I think a paralyzed Entei still outsped my max HP, max special attack Heatran. So I switch in my Levitating Electros because I know he's banded into Bulldoze. So I take this time to get a nice crunch off, thinking he'd switch out again into one of his, either his Bronzong or his Haunter. He doesn't do that, so he's locked in a Bulldoze. He's got 8% HP left, so I just use a Power-Up Punch, get that nice attack raise, and he brings out his Haunter. I'm not sure what kind of Haunter this was. I don't know if it was Scarfed, I don't know if it was Life Orb, I don't know if it was Sashed. But I do know if it was Sashed, I just broke that shit with the rocks. So I just go straight for the crunch. Of course, he outspeeds me, and he ends up debonding and takes down my Electros as I take down the Haunter. So at this point, my Smeargle Sash is still intact, which is amazing. So I figured, hey, this is a great time to lead with Smeargle, as neither of us know what each other's going to lead with. So he brings out his Mantine, and I'm like, all right, you're going back to sleep, Mantine. So one more Dark Void takes care of that. Thankfully it lands again, and I take this time to set up my webs. I'm stacking up hazards right now, and now I'm just going to pivot out with a nice parting shot, and I'm going back into my Gardevoir, and I'm just going to smack this thing with the Thunderbolt, and that is going to be a dead Mantine. There's no way it's living a Choice Specs Thunderbolt, or any Thunderbolt for that matter. So he brings in his Bronzong, and I'm trying to preserve my differential here, because I know that I won this match at this point. Like, in the back of my mind, I know that Scarfed Cross falls to my Scarfed Excelgor's final Gambit. So I'm just trying to preserve the 5-0 at this point. And I end up switching back into my Bricasso because I want to put this thing to sleep. This is why Dark Void is never ran over Spore, because it has an 80% chance to hit and that 20% chance really just fucked my 5-0 over right there. So I missed the Dark Void, sorry, and he ends up finishing my guy off, which is okay, I guess. So this is a bit risky, but kind of not really at the same time. So unless he had Earthquake, which was definitely a possibility, then I was safe to use whatever move that I wanted to. And as I've already seen 2 attacking moves and Stealth Rocks, I didn't think he had Earthquake, so I didn't think he had anything to hit me with here, which he ended up not having. So I go for the Lava Plume. At this point I don't know if he's heat proof or if he is Levitate, and I guess before bringing my Heatran, I could have brought in my Gardevoir to trace his ability, figure out what he had, and then switch in something accordingly to that. But I just went for the Heatran instead. Went for that Lava Plume. Was lucky enough that he didn't have heat proof, but I was carrying Earth Power anyway. So if he had heat proof, next turn I would have just smacked him up with an Earth Power. He sets up his rocks, and I'm just gonna keep blasting him with Lava Plume. It's a pretty bulky set, so it's gonna take a few turns. I get the burn. It doesn't really matter at this point. He's fighting a losing battle with this Gyro Ball and heavy slamming Bronzong against a max HP Steel type and Fire type Pokemon. So he brings in his Heracross, and I figured like he could go for the close combat and bring down my Heatran and get the 3-0 instead of the 4-0. But I didn't want to switch anything in on his attack, because if I misplayed here, there's a chance that, well, there actually wasn't a chance that I could lose, but I just didn't want to bring anything in on like a Mega Horn, because Gardevoir would have dropped to that, Celebi would have dropped to that, and Excelgor, I don't know if Excelgor would have dropped to that, honestly. I don't run calcs when I play, I just play for fun. So, but I leave him in, and he ends up missing his Mega Horn, which is great, and I go for the Lava Plume, and I finish the match off. And I win this week's battle with a nice 4-0 victory over Jamie, and I was pretty happy about this because last season he prevented me from going to the playoffs. So I needed my revenge, and I got that sweet, sweet revenge. Hope you guys had enjoyed this match and understood like the plays and the sets that I was running. A lot of it had to do with things that he didn't even bring. So I guess like my team is shaping up pretty well. I think the trades that I made were worth it, and I hope to continue this streak in my future matches. Good luck to everybody else this week and in upcoming weeks, unless you're facing me. And for now, this is Reconjack or David signing off.